All right. Well, we are going to start.
Well, good afternoon in the UK, or maybe it is the morning wherever you are, and welcome. Thanks for joining us. It means a lot, especially when there is so much going on online. We are Isla and Miguel, co-directors of BEFestival, which is the Birmingham European Festival of Performing and Visual Arts. Every summer, we bring European artists to Birmingham. Today, we open BEatHome Festival, the special edition and digital of BEfestival 2020 that we have prepared in times of confinement in collaboration with the participating artists.
So hello, everyone. I need to start off with some housekeeping. This event will be recorded, so if you don't want to be seen on screen, switch off your cameras. But we've kept it in a meeting like this so that we can see each other if you want. It's also an inclusive space, so we're asking everyone to refrain from using language or the sharing of any material or images which may be deemed offensive. Anyone not adhering to this request will be removed immediately. The ethos of the festival has always been to cross borders, and with this edition, we think we're crossing not only geographical, linguistic, and borders between disciplines, but now digital platforms, screens, and we hope that we will continue to cross the border that feels the most important to us, which is the one with you, our audiences. We try to create a space for dialogue between artists and audiences. And within this context of social distancing and confinement, we wanted to keep the spirit of the festival alive and to foster and continue fostering the exchange. So that we hope that these 10 days are an opportunity to celebrate our connections, even if they take place in the distance.
When we were preparing the program in dialogue with all the artists taking part, we agreed to only present work that feels relevant to their practice, to the context of confinement we are living, and to the specific tools available to creators and audiences these days. From today and until the 16th of May, you can experience circus, performances, films, or attend a Q-Lab workshop. Since food has always been at the heart of the festival, from tomorrow we will share a series of recipes to finish with a cocktail workshop and a DJ party on Saturday 16th, where we will reveal the secret of our famous mojito.
So just when this crisis started, we were very clear about our priorities. We wanted first to keep everyone safe, and then in line with the Arts Council England guidelines to protect our freelancers, our staff and artists, and only then to prepare a coherent artistic response to these unprecedented circumstances. So now we would really like to thank the Arts Council and our board of directors, because with their support, we are able to pay everyone involved in making this festival and all the artists that are not participating but were programmed in the postponed physical live festival. So all the events are free to attend, but we welcome any sort of donations from you, our audiences, to be able to continue doing this work. Today, we open the festival with a panel discussion about the positioning artists and organizations are taking within this situation and post-confinement. This is why you're here, we think. So the three panelists will be talking for a little bit, and we will mute your microphones for that. And then we will open a time for interaction with questions and answers. And for that, you can use the chat that is here at the bottom of the screen, or you will be able to raise your hand and ask any question, and our people in the tech box will be giving you access. So let us introduce you to our three panelists. These are Charlotte Orti, currently director of, hello Charlotte, of Fast Forward European Festival in Dresden, Germany. Thank you for being here. Matt Burman, director of Cambridge Junction Theatre in the UK. Hello, Matt.
Hey.
Matt has also been very kind to jump in the last minute as chair of the discussion, so he'll be facilitating a bit the chat between you all three. Thanks for doing this. And Michele Di Stefano. Hello, Michele.
Ciao, ciao, hello.
From his fancy kitchen, who's an artist, founder, director of the dance company MK, and who is also involved as an associate artist with some programming responsibilities in Teatro India in Rome, Italy. Thank you all three for doing this. The panel will last about 90 to 100 minutes, and thank you very much.
Well, just to tell you, if you enjoy the festival, please tell your friends. And of course, we hope you enjoy this new edition of the festival. Thank you.
And now we'll see Matt.
Thank you, Miguel. Thank you, Miguel and Isla. Thank you for the invitation to speak today, and welcome to everyone who's joined us. I just want to say one thing quickly before I give a short presentation, and that is to acknowledge that we don't have the technology, we don't have the facility at this point to interpret or to caption Zoom for those who might be deaf or hearing impaired. However, we are recording the meeting and we will transcribe the session afterwards. So if you have difficulties accessing what we're saying today, there will be an opportunity to engage with the discussion outside of this. So I've prepared a few words. So recently I experienced a moment of zeitgeist, of synchronicity, where it seems that one can start to isolate signal from noise. Time seems to be passing at unpredictable speeds at the moment. So this could have been days or months ago or yesterday. I've been dipping in and out of various books. My attention certainly in deficit. In Raul Martinez's Creating Freedom, I read this line: if a movement that can overcome the power of private capital is to take roots, it has to unite around a common vision for change, one that can counter the claim that there is no alternative. Then I read the following in a piece by Florian Malzacker in Not Just a Mirror, the first of the House on Fire publications. Florian wrote, where the credo of there is no alternative is considered common sense and the belief in the possibility or even desirability of political imagination is fading, theatre is hit at its core. I thought about how performance and the performing arts have certainly been actually and existentially affected by lockdowns across the planet. The heat and the dynamic of art and artist meeting audience are shared experiences forbidden. I've been thinking a lot about what we might want to retain from what was before to what might come after. Obviously, I think we all have. I've been thinking and talking with artists and producers about what we might want to change, how we might activate change, the things that we anyway wanted to transform in our working lives, in our communities, in our society. Why should it only be the 1% who capitalise from disaster? Then an email landed in my inbox from Evie and Rhiannon, directors of the theatre company Commonwealth. sharing updates on what they were doing now and what they are planning to develop in the future. They talked about a new project with the perfect working title, There Is an Alternative. And in that brief moment, I felt a glimmer of hope in the dark. For me, right now, there can be an almost overwhelming sense of uncertainty. As someone who sometimes prides themselves on being a solutions expert, I have struggled to know what course of action to take beyond processing the horrible logistics of unproducing a season of work and a festival, cancelling and postponing hundreds of events and furloughing 90% of our staff. In the past, I have tritely overused the phrase, embrace not knowing, in counselling marketing teams when deadlines are approaching and a programme is still not finalised. We are all, to a degree, experts in uncertainty, but we are used to that not knowing, that uncertainty principle being framed by the known. At the moment, we are at risk of drowning in both known and unknown unknowns. Where I hope to find possible futures, possible alternatives, are in the meeting of mind and heart that we can still have now, and that perhaps we can foster more in the future. And for me, the one thing I can be certain of are the principles that guide the conversations I have with artists and that shape the ways in which I believe arts organisations can support creative risk and the development of new work. I should say that I can only speak for myself in all of this, and other organisations will need to be differently pragmatic. For instance, we were able to pay artists and companies full fees for cancelled performances, and this was a matter of principle for me. However, we were able to do this because we are part of Arts Council England's national portfolio and because we have reserves due to the mixed economy of our business model, and not everyone has that luxury. The principles, actions or qualities at the core of Cambridge Junction's curatorial approach are to disrupt and to linger. And we are riding that disruptive energy right now. We had a new festival programmed for the end of May called simply Disrupt, in big capital letters. Pretty awful bit of nominative determinism right there. Through Disrupt, we explore disruptive artistic practice and creative disruptive technology, how we might disrupt the everyday, how we might change the ways we see the world around us, how audiences and artists and communities might disrupt our programme, how we engage with one another. Through Linger, we seek to foreground work that has the power to move us emotionally, physically, and intellectually, that stays in our hearts and minds beyond our encounter with the experience of the work. How artists might linger with us through residencies and long-form making processes, how we might linger in communities by sharing stories or skills, leaving artistic traces and having longer-term positive impacts on the life of those places. These actions give us foundations from which we can begin conversations with artists, conversations which often begin with the question, what do you need? Not telling an artist what I want. What I want is to create the conditions in which artists can take risks, can fail, can make their best work. I ask artists to challenge us, to push us. What I hope is that I can help people flourish. But I don't think I have all the answers, and it is in that self-knowledge that uncertainty can have real merit, rather that than the certainty of the fascist. There are massive power imbalances in the arts, inequalities that fracture and create precarity, with these cracks formed by racism, ableism, income, class, between people with salaries and those dependent on the gig economy, the institutionalized and the independent. And it is in these cracks that I hope we can work together to find bridges, to fill canyons. We often look to our institutions, to our funding bodies for these solutions. And for sure, as organisations, we must do more to ensure we are representative that we do the labor that we have often required of independent artists and companies, that we do all we can to more fairly distribute our wealth. But for me, the clearest solution, not only to our current situation, particularly with regards to our huge concerns around loss of income and lack of work, but also to pre-existing tensions, this specifically talking about the UK really, but applicable elsewhere obviously, is to collectivise with other workers, with unions and with the public sector to wholeheartedly campaign for universal basic income. If we are to learn new ways to work in the new normal, a phrase I hate, what is normal, who's normal, who wants to be normal anyhow, then we all need space and time to do that. We need not to feel pressed to return to our old ways of working against our own better judgment or our own risk assessments, forced not to follow our own instincts to protect the health and well-being of our fellow artists, our audiences, our staff, our family and friends, just because we need to kick-start the economy and make a living that was anyway pretty precarious. We need time to sit with this state of uncertainty, to feel its tension, its ebb and flow, to enjoy conversations without outcomes, to reflect and ponder, adapt and clarify, to visualize our revolutions and form new alliances. What can we learn from this feeling of uncertainty if we can sit with it, look directly at it for long enough? There is an alternative, and we will find it if we allow ourselves time and space, if we continue to take risks, if we are inclusive, if we talk with one another, if we collaborate. So that's me. I'm passing over to Charlotte, I believe.
Yes. Yeah, thank you very much, Matt. Thank you very much, Miguel and Isla, for this invitation, and thanking for doing your Bee Festival in this form and for making things visible, because at the moment this is the best thing we can try to do, I think. I try to give this very interesting and impressive introduction by Matt, maybe a bit my personal situation of feelings in the last weeks. I just came in time back from a research traveling to Germany, just in time, because it nearly happened that I got stuck in Latvia. But then when the lockdown began, I thought, okay, I will not be able to travel for the next week, so I will continue doing my research online, watching videos, and will find enough work to do and talk to artists by video conferences and so on, and stay in touch with the world. Then, step by step and very heavily in the beginning of the third week, I started to realize that the consequences of this situation are much more bigger, much more far-reaching and deeper than I thought before at the beginning. Of course, I was aware that our theater, to which my festival is connected, stopped producing, prolonged the premieres, postponed the productions, and that a lot of freelancing artists lost their budgets and their incomes from one day of another. I also realized that they had been, in a way, various attempts to protect them in this situation, to give different funds and support and measures by the governments, decided to solve this situation more or less, and also created a kind of chaos and tried to figure that out. But the thing was, what was more important and in a way hit me not really prepared, was that I suddenly realized how many works of young artists are not produced at the moment and will never become, or maybe for a long time not become, visible. So that in a lot of European countries, young makers at the moment at the universities, at the theaters and the production houses won't get produced, won't become visible, and won't become the initiation, how to say, or experience the initiation to appear in the world with their work, with that what they have to say. And then in the third week, I thought, pooh, what can we do now? What kind of situation is this? And what is now our task, or the task of people like me, like curators, or those working for theater? The next thing that did hit me, that of course it was clear that in a situation like this, you feel immediately that art in a way has to be defended. And as no one wants to defend something against something else, we also need, as humans and society, I started to become angry, because I thought, what kind of values or richness of the arts would I now have to defend, and how to do this? And the difficult task, I think, in this relation is, as one says in German, that the value of art lies in the eye of the beholders. That means, or as one could say, to grasp the paradox on a different way, the value lies in the individuality of a shared community or shared experiences. So it depends on the values we consider that the soft skills have for us, or should have for us, on the attention we pay, on the ability to share experiences, feelings, and thoughts in regard to someone else's story. It depends on the needs that one feels to remind one another that we are humans in another way than the economy does. So maybe, or I hope, that by saying this, it is clear that there are quite a lot of contradicting feelings I experienced the last week, and that I'm still experiencing them. In a certain way, I think art depends on the acceptance of a society, and especially in the performing arts, because the performing arts don't happen without an audience. And so we need the acceptance of people and of a society. And on the other hand, and this is also a paradoxical situation, art needs the freedom to be radical, to explore the frames and the borders and the contradictions of our existence. Because then art will also be able to explore new options and new perspectives, to be a laboratory, and not for the virus, because this of course is the task of the scientists, but the laboratory for us, for the society, and for the impact the virus will have on our communities and social lives. So I'm sure you will feel it. I don't have an answer, but I know that there is a need to support the arts, and together, and to explore, and to have the time to offer things to the people for the times when we are hopefully allowed again together, and to share these experiences in one rooms and next to another, and also with our bodies, which is a dimension that is heavily missing at the moment. Yes, I would say I stop here, and we see how we will go on when we continue discussing together. Okay? Thank you.
It's me. Hello, everybody. Thank you, of course. Thank you, Charlotte and Matt. And here is my perspective. I wrote some notes because I'm not so fluent with English, also with a Mediterranean flavor. So obviously, it's unthinkable to spend this time out of ordinary, simply waiting for a return to normal. If this meantime, if this time in between that does not inspire change, then it's just comparable to holidays, and this is not the case, of course. My change of perspective primarily concerns the fact that this meantime has little to do with the public absence of the scene. The meantime is the essence of the scene and must be supported. Festivals, theaters, institutions, companies should experiment together with the emergence of a new temporality and a new attitude towards the performing matter to make this meantime become public. I think we could consider the end of artistic production as objects. Objects require events and crowds. I think we should help the proliferation of organism instead, because organisms require visitors. Objects are difficult, organisms are not. By force of things, starting from a local perspective, so I imagine opening all the possible structures to research, to favor research, which contains all the questions related to the moment we are living, and therefore will consequently evolve its own particular protocols in response to this. Guarantee this possibility to put research into action, to be able to distribute economies to the aggregations, to the basis of theatrical research, to that set of different skills that create companies, which are living constellations that now are watered down, so to say. So I think help us to keep open. The public flows and benefits in a different way because they know that everything is not concentrated in events, in particular programs. Theater is open in long time. Theater is always open. You decide when to pass, but we are always at work. We are, of course, we are not touring. We will not take trains, and we will be vigilant, of course, but we will be many and live, only live, and we will build temporary and localized intensities, always visitable. And so you don't ask us for a resolutive phrase on the future because we live in the present. And why we should continue to work just around the grocery stores, for example. Shouldn't we be able to enter different places? Certainly from a distance, certainly with a blanket on our heads, I don't know, but savoring a risk that the theater itself contains. And it's not a way to say things in a poetic way. I really believe that the meantime, the time in between, exposing this meantime, it contains a different possibility of ritual and habitability without shelves, without products. I think that the happening of the collective with the live perspective can be a good ground to give the momentary present a chance of foresight. And also, of course, this means also solidarity and support, financial supports. But this must be always live and always without objects. Of course, I try to have definitive solutions, but that's my point of view.
Brilliant. Thank you, Michele. So we're going to, well, chat is open. Do put your questions in there, and then we'll come to them momentarily. I'm going to try and follow that with a few questions of my own, but there's such a provocation, I think, in both Charlotta and Michele's presentations that I feel like I feel like the conversation that I've talked about valuing is sort of present in this space now. So as much as this can be like a conversation, let's try that. I'm going to switch to gallery view because I hate looking at my face. I'm really interested in the sort of commonality, I think, between Charlotta and Michele's presentations. There's something really interesting in the idea of laboratory in terms of something which is researching both. I suppose, Charlotta, you were talking about the impacts on community, and Michele, you were talking about researching all of the questions related to the situation that we find ourselves in. And I'm interested in how you imagine those spaces being activated, and who is present in those spaces. Are those spaces which contain only artists, or are they spaces of participation, or are they spaces that activate collaboration with academics? I'm interested in, and Michele, you talked about sort of the meanwhile use of space, the occupation of spaces other than theatres and localized actions, and I'm very interested in how you both how you both visualize those spaces, I suppose.
First?
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay, it's me.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say one thing to Michele's approach, because it's like it's a poetic strategy which is described, I guess, by Gilles Deleuze, who said the starting point is in between. So it's like grass between stones. We always start in between. And this is nice to trying to transfer this now into this situation, because it's an approach that means so if I can't show an object, I'm in between. So let me find out how many people I can let in my house. So, and the theater is also a house, how many people I can let in from time to time and show them something else, so that they can go in and out maybe 24 hours a day. And of course, we have to organize how to make this possible so that it's safe. But maybe what they find inside is different than that we showed before. And this is could be one situation to start with. And I think it would be good to have the freedom to have a lot of situations to start with, and to find out how we can invite the artist to do something with the situation, but also the audience, because this is really, I said it before, I think this is the special situation in the performing arts, that it's a culture of encounter. And at the moment we have a really, like you said it, Matt, a disruption of this encounter, and in a way we have to reinvent it. And I think, I mean, in the frame of the political situation, I think we should make proposals and not waiting for others to open us up again. And maybe the proposals are small in the beginning, or like one-to-one meetings between one audience member and one artist. And this is the kind of research I'm thinking of, and I have to think of, because I'm trying to plan a festival that should take place in November.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a very beautiful proposal, actually. This sort of starting very small and experimenting and growing from a point of contraction, I suppose, if you like. Michele, do you want to respond to that?
Yes, I totally agree with Charlotte. Of course, this is one part of a big multitude of possibilities and thinking. But what I see is that I'm very optimistic. So I think the future will be brilliant, and objects will find always the way to come back, because capitalism is smart. But what I intend is that now the possibility is to really reconnect with the primary idea of theater, so to say, and considering time and the relationships between who stands on stage and who stands in the audience as the primary intense moment, that if we reconsider totally the idea of time and fruition, we can give a chance to this to emerge again as a I don't want to say as starting point for things going better, but really as another possibilities, which is already in the blood of so many artists in this last 10 or 15 years. Everyone in the community, and this is another fact that it's real that artists are getting closer to one another. It's becoming I mean, the glyph of the red heart in the WhatsApp chats is super abused now. Everyone feels so strongly affected to the others that I see this possibility for the part that is not in the conversation, so to say. No, institutions. And I speak in my position in which I have a dialogue with the institution. I am somehow part of an institution which has an intention which is research and laboratory, but is an institution. So we have a place, a big one, with a lot of outdoor space. But what we really would like to do is to give to this space existence 24/7, because this contains a real possibility to find other elements of the discourse and to relate to the body and to the proximity of bodies in a way that is effective. I mean, if we stretch the intensity in a long period, in a long term, of course, people is widening their distances of crowding. You know, this is very simple. But it's not only that. It's the idea that I can drink theater whenever I'm thirsty. Is this is the thing that make me excited about it. And I'm not speaking only in a reverie. We are going to do that. We are going to push this, and I think this could be a laboratory for a moment that in time will adjust. And I don't know. I'm not a magician. It will adjust. But what I really see is the chance to get things exciting, so to say.
And how for you? I mean, you obviously speaking from an Italian context. How could things become more exciting for you?
If this the idea that we have, I make a premise. I am one of the 5 companies in Rome who are invited by the direction of Teatro di Roma to inhabit the theater. This theater, Teatro India, is vocated to research and to experimentation. So we were asked to make it alive, apart from the normal program, no? To reverberate everything in a great big river flowing with new experiments on time and new experiments on the way people come and take part in the events and in other formats that we were building. So it's just like a consequence of something that was already happening. And this tragic and absurd situation make it exceptional, because it stresses more the fact that we can really try to change this perspective. This means that the theater sustains the activities of the companies, not relating to objects, but relating to trajectories. And this is already a big change in the mentality of the institution, because we are not defining the boundary of a creative object. We are letting it to be liquid, no? So this is really a change of perspective. And it's interesting, and it can be improved and developed, and let's see. But if you adopt this change of perspective, here is when things get exciting to me.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think, you know, yeah, thinking beyond the project as objects, I think is a really exciting proposition. This may be a I was going to say symptom, but that's a loaded word nowadays. But this may be a result of our different sort of relationships in time between in our separate countries, in Germany and Italy and the UK, and our sort of relationship to lockdown and our ability to see beyond lockdown, I suppose. But I found it very interesting that none of us have mentioned working digitally or working online as an alternative or as a way of working that we're interested in. Is that a definitive position to you? I mean, there's been a very clear, I would say, a rush. Not talking about present company, obviously BEfestival has done a very considered and brilliant job of going online, but there has been a rush in other quarters to share content. That content is being often shared for free. Some of that content is of a very high quality and is using the technology in interesting ways. Other content is less successful, I would say. Is there an interest for you in working in ways that isn't live? And maybe start with Michele, because I think you most clearly said it has to be live.
Let's say I quote you when you say, of course, we need time to sit with this. But at the moment, my definitive answer is totally not. I don't substitute these. What I'm searching with the emotion and the feeling and the intensity of what we want to create with this surrogate. And also technology is selective. So there are a lot of problems that we are facing. But I don't believe it's theater. Listen, when they asked us as artists to do something like that online, what we did was switching totally to a radio. We are actually doing Radio India, but just because the hearing situation is a dimension that is so deeply connected with theater and with the body. I mean, I always, as a choreographer, thought that the body can be related to sound in its objective. No? It can be spreading everywhere. It can jump over obstacles. It can be delayed. It can be reverberated. Body and sounds are very interesting to put together. So to switch completely to a dimension of total hearing is not doing a substitution, is going deep into the matter of theater. So to be totally honest, we are really doing a radio. We are not putting our fantasies or our processes into programs on the radio. We are doing the radio totally in the dark. So we are learning with the people, with the audience, which is there, which understood this attitude and followed us in this new dimension, which is of course momentary, but is not substituting the live performance. Who can substitute the live performance?
Thank you, Michele. I just want to pick up on Rachel's point that's coming on chat, that Rachel's mentioned that it's an issue that so much content relies on sound and that this is not accessible to all artists, especially our deaf colleagues. And I really appreciate that comment and acknowledge that. Charlotte, what's your view on digital content as opposed to live? I mean, I think for me, Michele has summed that up very well.
Now, I didn't get the last part of your question because there was like a disruption in the connection, but I'm thinking also, or I'm thinking in a mixture of digital and also analog version maybe, because I think that the digital world at the moment allows us to connect very easily. And this is also for me a platform to have an exchange. That's the first thing. And of course, it's not, how to say, it's not the sphere of the performing arts like we know them and we want to experience them. It's something else. So I think you have to think very carefully what to show in the digital world, and you need artists to do this, because there are also a lot of young artists who know to deal with the digital format and media much more than I do, and there are also a lot of artists. I talked with some who do or have also the video work as part of their work in the performing arts, and they are at the moment exploring them in a different way because it's a chance to produce and do something, and at the same time experiences their borders. So this is also an issue of research, to see how you could use the digital world for what you could use the medias, and maybe where to continue or stop them if it does not go further. But I wouldn't say that I would deny them or reject them, not at all, because for the purpose of connecting people and make also discourses and discussions accessible, I would say I still need it in my context.
Thank you, Charlotte. I think we'll go to some questions now. I'm going to go back to the top, and I think James was the first person to ask a question. James's question was, what advice would you give to young artists in lockdown who have lots of time on their hands but no physical stage to present their work? I was just going to pick up on that question of sound and listening. Actually, one of the things that I noticed, well, I can't remember how early, as I say, time's become weird, but I noticed that how draining I was finding screen-based conversations, and how much more I appreciated phone calls. And I think certainly I'm really appreciating the time that I have to have long chats on the phone with artists through this period. And I think I would certainly advise young artists who have emerging relationships or have some relationship with institutions, with programmers, that having conversations at this point is something that I would be hustling for, I would say. But Michele, what advice would you give to a young artist at this moment, if you can remember that far back?
I really don't know. I really don't have any advice for anyone. I mean, especially for artists, I think you find your strength inside. I cannot give it any advice.
Charlotte?
I mean, this is also a part of the artistic work, if you are in a way apart from the pandemic situation now in a trap where it does not go further, to go out again or to find out. And sometimes there is these, I don't know if you know this story, it had been written down by a German sociologist. I always have problem with this word, but and it says, be a bee like flies. And this is the story. He explored if you have bees in a bottle and you have flies in a bottle, and you're putting the bottles with the bottom of the bottles on to your window side, so the sun comes from this side, and the bees are trying to explore if there is a hole in the bottom of the bottle to get out. And they're doing this very carefully, and no bee finds the way out. And the flies, they are chaotic, and they're just mingling around, and by coincidence, someone finds the way out on the other side of the bottle. So maybe this just as a, maybe not helpful, but it's an example. We are all together. We have to find out what to do. And I agree with you totally, Matt. Call someone and talk to people.
I was just thinking that I seem to spend a lot of my time letting wasps out of my office at the moment. I don't let any flies out. They just keep bashing their heads against the window. But wasps I let out. Be like a wasp. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sylvia makes a very good comment. Can we activate Sylvia? Sylvia, would you like to share your point with your real life voice?
Yes, of course. I agree that there is no advice to give, like Michele said. But in the dialogue I'm having from the first day of lockdown with the young artists that are closer to me, and also with some movement of art workers and dancers in my country, in Italy, I must say that I see their great energy, their will to do and to make things, the great feeling of uncertainty that of course is also based on the economical conditions and the support each country is giving or doesn't giving. And this arises also in some international discussion we are having through Aerowaves network, for instance. And of course, the situations from this point of view are very different. I guess that I could suggest them to stay in between with presence, because in my feeling there are so many opportunities also in this moment to explore, as also Paul O'Donnell is commenting here in the chat, the digital perspective. That is not the worst thing that can happen. Of course, we have to reimagine how to stay in the public space, how to stay in touch with our local communities, but also with the global communities as the borders are closed now. And so, yes, this is the point of view.
Great, thank you, Sylvia. Yeah, I think Paul makes a good point. Paul, do you want to say your point with your voice? Can we bring Paul in?
Yes, I can do. Hello.
Hey.
I turned my video off because I was eating my chicken Kiev for dinner. Yeah, I mean, I guess my sort of perspective on digital is that there's sort of no better time than now for artists to be exploring that thing. And I think it's something that is useful right now because theatres and art spaces potentially won't open until 2021 even. Whereas the digital platforms are open right now. There's ways of making money out of it, which I haven't managed to do yet. But I just think there's a lot of potential in the digital realm that now is the best time to explore that, because we have noted events for our art in this current lockdown situation. And I've found in the little experimentations that I've had that it's really sort of expanded my audience and connected me to audiences in different countries as well as across the UK that I might not have engaged before, and content is a lot more shareable. And I agree with what you were saying, Matt, of like, I get really bored of looking at my screen, but hopefully we can explore different ways of creating art and sharing art, whether that is audio or whether that is visual or yeah, I just think it's a great time to be experimenting.
Thanks, Paul. I think that's a very good point. I mean, with all of these things, it's a case of different media, different forms being appropriate for different people. I think the thing that I would challenge would be where artists are being sort of forced is the wrong word, but artists feel they have to take a digital opportunity to make money when that might not be appropriate for their practice or their form. But I think Paul's point is very good. There are ways of monetizing this. That it's a great way of connecting with audiences internationally and nationally. And certainly, while some people are getting widescreen faces from looking at screens all day, other people are really enjoying getting their cultural fix online. Laura's got a comment. Laura, would you like to share this?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, fine. Okay. I know that digital, I mean, everybody is going digital because it is the way to go. It is the obvious, useful way to go in this context. But we are working in our context, in our organization's context, we're working with dance, which is absolutely physical. And we have our platform will be happening at the end of the year. I don't know whether it will happen physically or whether it will happen digitally. I'm concerned about what happens when what happens when the only alternative is considered an opportunity. You know, because there is the real lack of physical presence and the need for connection, which probably in terms of audio is closest to anything, you know, I mean, because you can actually close your eyes and you can feel that physically. It's different than watching something on a screen, but I think about, I'm spending a lot of time thinking about what are the most useful alternatives here besides just sharing things online, especially when you're working with an art form that really demands, which is based on, whose essence is based on physical connection. Even if it's a physical connection between what's happening in the performance space and the physical connection that's happening with the audience. I'm curious to explore, you know, what other, besides those digital opportunities, which are still flat screen.
Charlotte.
Just one question back. Would you imagine that in case, because I mean, people are allowed to go to the streets meanwhile, and I hope that this will stay, that we can move in the streets. What would you think about moving in the streets? I mean, it's this kind of thinking of site specifics or becoming just visible outside could be a start, maybe.
I was reminded of two things. One was a beautiful audio piece by Helen Cole and Alex Bradley, which captured the sound of dancers breathing, the breath of dancers as they danced to a point of physical limit. I can't think quite how to describe that, but they danced until they could dance no longer. And also thinking about a beautiful piece by Tilted Dance called Seesaw, where a number of the scenes in that had a dancer it was a site-specific piece, and the dancers were 30 or 40 meters away, and the beauty of choreography at a distance. However, I think we all hope, we all imagine that there will be a time beyond the restrictions that are currently in place, and I think for some art forms, for some forms of practice, it might be a case of simply waiting until it is possible to do that again, and spending time in sort of in reflecting on your practice, and sort of waiting for moments when at some point in the future a company might be able to be in a room together making work before we are able to have larger public audiences. And I think there will be stages in that process. I think it's very hard to sort of propose anything beyond what I imagine you're thinking of already.
I'm thinking about the best way to use the opportunity that we will be given in December. Because not only thinking about what the artists, we work with lots of emerging artists, thinking about what they need, thinking about what audiences need as well, that need for closeness and for connection, and the best way to make it work, even thinking very much out of the box. Mm-hmm. Very, very much out of the box. It's a real challenge to be it's a real challenge to be a la altura. It's a real challenge to be up to it, to really be up to the challenge, to be up to what is being asked for us, and find what is the most useful and the most the most innovative way to connect, even if we can't physically connect.
I think for me, as a programmer, the artists and the work I'm most interested in are the stories that artists are compelled to tell, and they know of no other way to tell them through that specific expression of it. And I think obviously the frames within which work are being will be made over the coming months are very different, and the ways in which we can communicate that or distribute that work will be very different. However, I will still be most interested in a creative compulsion, I suppose, in terms of how that work can connect and be communicated. Have we got any other questions? Does anybody just want to put their hand up? And we will try and spot the hands. Charlotte.
I have one question for you, Matt. I would be interested in regard to your festival, Disrupt. Will you try to do any alternative version of it?
I wasn't going to, then as of this morning, I think I might do. It was one of those, it was sort of, inspired by an artist who we were talking to about the program, getting in contact yesterday and saying, actually, I think there is a way that we could make an online version of, a digital version of this. And speaking to a number of artists about work that they really want to share with people right now. It's sort of gradually a program of work which is a sort of combination of things that we were going to program as part of Disrupt and things that we had to postpone from our spring season are coming together as a program, which I think sort of captures some of Disrupt, captures some of how artists are responding in this moment. The challenge that I have is I have no producing or marketing team right now because they're all furloughed. I'll have to remember how to do all of those things again. But I think, yes, I think we will have something like Disrupt probably in the middle of June, and giving us a bit more time to think about that. But also, you know, I think coming back to that question of digital live, you know, I'm most interested in work that will play with that technology, or play with the medium in some way, or where people feel the medium is the best way of communicating that work. And also I'm really interested in, I'm interested in audio work, as Michele is, and also thinking about, I don't know whether people have come across a project led by the producer Hannah Slimman, called Curious Parcel, which was a pilot project that she did last year, where they send artists designed boxes of work that were sent as a kind of subscription model to people who bought ticket, and then people were able to make a piece of work themselves at home. And I've been interested that not more people have thought of work that could be sent in the post to people, or that could be kind of Fluxus rule based work that could be shared with people to make themselves. But yeah, I'm interested in where that might go. But I think there will be a Disrupt, and it will be kind of digital, even though I've gone off it. I might not watch my own festival.
also there is by a choreographical point of view, there is another aspect that needs to be investigated more and more, and this is the aspect of this protocol of the meeting. What I say is that I believe that the posture of the body creates the world, no? And everyone has his own approach to the world. So the posture of a body outdoor is different from the posture of the body indoor, because of course the space between the bones is different, because you know everything when you are indoor. So if we trying to consider the space indoor as an outdoor space, and maybe we need more space, more square meters for our projects, but if we can consider also that there is a very interesting research matter in the way people stay together in a space. Distance is one of the principal objects of choreographic inquiries. So it could be, this research could be widened. I don't know if we are going, everyone is going to do bit watching style, but anyway, it is very interesting to deepen this aspect and not immediately go somewhere else. No, there is something there that needs to be investigated.
Thank you, Michele. James has asked another question. He's asked, is the lockdown itself inspiring new work? One obvious piece of work that I know of is Forced Entertainment's End Meeting for All, which is a series of episodes which began a week last Tuesday, and the final one's next Tuesday. You can access those via their website. They're not time limited episodes. I declare an interest. I was general manager for Forced Entertainment, but I do think it is one of the most interesting responses so far that I've seen, both to technology, the use of Zoom, the use of that technology, lockdown, and the desire to stream work, particularly work that is in some way replacing what was going to be a live performance. They were due to premiere a new work at Paxilverein, I think, and Musantum and Hebel, and obviously they've had to postpone those plans. So it was sort of, it's both responding to the practicalities of lockdown and also the aesthetic framework, I suppose. But yeah, Michele or Charlotte, do you have any thoughts as to the work that is responding to lockdown?
Oh yeah, well, of course. No, not relating to some object. I was thinking immediately of these songs by an English group, actually, is Wire. This song was called Maroon. No, is that that person that goes on an iceberg and needs to be hidden. So, but his fire is narrowing the iceberg. So he has to choose if he want to be warm or to lose control of the ship, so to say. So what's happening in the lockdown, and what's happening to me, and is that I'm also finding some other kind of fuel to avoid that this iceberg goes narrow. I mean that the things that I used to dialogue with myself, they are not enough anymore. And this is interesting and inspiring. Where is this other kind of gasoline?
Thank you, Michele. Charlotte, anything from you?
Yeah, I guess it will inspire new works, but it will also be a very, very hard time for other artists who are like separated from everything that inspires them through this situation. So I guess it's difficult also to answer this in general, because it's so much depending on how you're working or what kind of work you need. In a way, although there is so much focus on the digital world and we all are using it very often all the day over, that what I'm hoping personally is that we explore, or maybe we develop our sense for perception and see what comes to us, to our eyes, to our ears, and also the lack of mingling with others and touching bodies also may help us refocus maybe certain things. I think we should also explore our antennas and how they change at the moment. And in regard to forced entertainment, I only saw the first part of the series, and it really surprised me that I had been so much touched by it, because there is suddenly this loneliness in these Zoom windows, and it's really amazing how they capture it. It was really, for me, also something I was very thankful for having had the possibility to watch it last week.
Thank you. Misha, we've got a question for you. What do you think the impact of digitalization in theatre will be post-pandemic? I.e., do you see online digital festivals and theatre carrying on, companies continuing to stream performances, etc.? Once everything's back to normal. I think it's a very interesting question. I think there are things around the accessibility to work that digitization and streaming online are enabling. Obviously, it is potentially massively increasing the accessibility of work to people who are unable to travel to theatres for whatever reason, for whom the cost of tickets is a barrier to attendance. And I think, obviously, I think a lot of people have commented on, or I've seen a lot of people commenting on the fact that these are measures that disabled audiences, or those with disability, or those who, for whatever reason, are unable to engage with work in the ways that the able-bodied are able to engage, have been asking for many years and been told that it's not possible. So I think it does open up an area of possibility in how we increase the accessibility of work, for sure. whether people will continue with that beyond this moment, I think is a very interesting question. I think a lot of people will be, a lot of organizations will be hoping to monetize things in different ways. I mean, speaking for ourselves, we're looking at how we might, I was thinking of calling this project Stable Door or Project Hindsight, but setting up some kind of a channel where we can capture contemporary performance that is in the building, so that we're providing a service, if you like, to organize, to companies and artists coming to the junction in documenting their work, but also looking at how we can increase the impact of work that we're commissioning or co-producing, and that often will only have one night or a couple of nights performance in Cambridge. So looking at how we increase the reach and impact of that work. So I think there is potential in that. But again, Charlotte, would you like to comment on whether you think people will continue working online beyond lockdown?
It depends. If somebody discovers this for his or her work, or if people just say afterwards, I don't want to touch the digital tools any longer. It's for me completely speculative. I think what is important, and I also heard it from several sites and especially theaters, what you just said, Matt, that it's also giving a new accessibility to art and performances for people who are not living in the big cities, who are just take the chance to watch a lot of work they wouldn't have been able to access otherwise. So there are so many pro and cons, and it's not about summing it up, but I think what is important for us as makers and people who have the chance to facilitate work and show it, that we really take care now for the networks to organize each other and to help building structures also for the time after. I think this is the important thing. We should try to take care somehow or continue to work in this direction. And it's not depending if it goes on then digital or not digital. I think the connections we are encouraged to build up through this situation. This is the thing which is important after the crisis.
Mm-hmm. And Michele, I can.
And there is also another data is that people is really asking for that. I mean, in Italy, in the other part of Teatro di Roma, which is the National Theatre, actually is the second big national theatre. The people who have the annual tickets and so on, they are really asking and following the streaming. So this data was a little surprising for me, but I don't know what it means. But in terms of the use of technology and digital, you can expect that we will have new sensibilities, or just on the other hand, new products. That's it.
Thank you, Michele. Alessandro has asked a question. Do you think that the momentary fear of contact will change the audience's perception of choreography? I think that's a good question. I think it probably applies as much to music as well. I know people are expressing concern about being in the space with singers, being in a space with choirs in particular. But Alessandro, do you want to speak to that at all? Is Alessandro there?
He doesn't type me.
Okay. Charlotte, would you like to comment on that?
That's a good question. In a way, I think there will be. I mean, this is in a way the point where for which I think that it's good to try to explore the small formats and to think about how to encounter the audience, so the different art formats, to find out if they trust the situation and how they are able to trust it, and if they, yeah, what the audiences are looking for. If it's fine for, I mean, maybe you have to go to ask your global soccer club and make the performances in the football stadium to be safe, and maybe this would be fun for us.
It would be amazing.
I think that's a lovely idea. Any more questions out there? Anything that anyone is desperate to ask? No? Miguel and Isla, is there anything you want to ask? You always have good questions.
What, sorry? Miguel.
Do you have any questions?
Hello. Yes, we haven't touched on something you briefly mentioned about the value of how we are valuing the work at this moment. And it touches a bit on how you've been talking about monetizing and so on, but how do you think we should value the work, both economically, but on another level at this stage with the work that is being presented in the digital platforms? Here in Spain, where we are locked down, there's a big debate about how to pay, not pay, charge, not charge, about the work that is available online.
Isla, do you want to say something? We can see you whispering, you know.
Yeah. Okay. And yeah, I mean, there is this big question about how a lot of people, a lot of audience members take for granted that the artists are going to work and they need to share their work anyway. At least here, there is this big question mark that if there is an abuse on that, because there are many platforms offering spaces for artists to share, to take that connection with audiences and to test their work. And that implies a risk, at least here. So I would like to know a little bit further in different countries, different scenarios, different cultures. So yeah.
A good example of what Isla just described is, what would you do with a piece that is already not touring? Would you share that for free because people have been already paid for doing that show? Or is sharing that work for free devaluing the work that was created, and therefore removing value to salaries and everything that artists do, which takes a long time as well?
I mean, I have my own views on that. I mean, I think in a way, like the performing arts world, there will be different models and different ways of approaching it, and we will probably have as many models as we have types of venue and models and structures of companies and theatre. So I think I'm really interested in the models which are still encouraging pay what you feel, pay what you decide, systems of donation, I suppose. I'm very glad that structures like the National Theatre are sharing their product for free, because they have monetized that. They have made a lot of income already from that work. I think we do need to develop new shared value frameworks. I mean, particularly in this country, I think, you know, politically we know that we struggle to have a shared value system in the UK, and I think how we value artists and their work is one of the things that we need to establish differently, not only with our audiences, but with relationships between programmers, organisations, and artists as well. We need to appreciate that value and the amount of work that is currently unpaid. I think, yeah, whether this moment will encourage that shift, I don't know. I think because work is being shared for free, it could devalue it. And I think probably the same people are donating, giving money as would buy a ticket to see work already. We're not sort of seeing a lot more people paying to see work, I think, at the moment. And I'll be interested after all of this to see whether actually we are seeing any new audiences in engaging with work, or whether it's actually the same people who were engaging with the work beforehand. I think, yeah, I think value systems are really interesting. I mean, just to big up my former employer, the Warwick Commission on the Future of Cultural Value is still a really fascinating report in sort of looking at a more holistic system of value or structure of value around an ecosystem, and a lot of the work which is sort of emerging and becoming more visible around cultural democracy, I think, also expresses a different set of value systems around work as well. Michele, Charlotte, have you got anything you want to add?
Well, for me, to be completely honest, is a little bit early to answer properly to this question. I need to sit with it, which is my favorite phrase now. And what is really interesting me now, and what all my attention is about the value of the performers. I don't speak about the product or the artistic creation. The value of the people who, in my case, made this happen. This is the first level of worry that I have now. A large group of people. I can resist to any pandemic. I am so totally autistic. I can stay here for years watching movies, but how do I relate? What are my possibilities to solve this question about the value of the performers, the people who act on stage? This is my main preoccupation.
Mm-hmm. And Charlotte?
I think in your opening impulse, Matt, you named the fact of basic income. So this is, of course, also something that came up in Germany quite fast after the lockup, to organize or to continue thinking about organizing or reorganizing the social structure of our society by basic income. And I think this is, in a way, a general question: what is a value, and where is the value? Is the value, lies it in the freedom to do the work, or the possibility to do the work because there's something like basic income, so you can survive with what you are doing, and then it would be also possible to offer things without asking for money. But it's a general discussion, because it means something how we are developed our relation towards our economical system, our social system, our political structure in general. I think Matt gave a lot of ideas in this direction at the beginning of this panel. And it's, I don't know, I mean, there are just two examples. I know that the composer from Baroque epoch, Handel, got 3 times bankrupt in England of this time because he did high expensive opera work and it was not able to do it in a profitable or in a capitalistic way to gain profits. And so we know that art works different, and it's really risky to try to make big money with it. So it has something other where it should rely on, or other economic structures. And the other thing is this idea which was expressed by Akero Manias in this film Noviembre, where this group of young people at the theater academy decide that it's not reasonable to make art and asking money for showing it. So they go out in the streets and they're making street theater and they refuse to be paid. And this is the other extreme and an extreme option, but maybe this is also, I know it does not answer your question right now, Miguel and Isla, but it's also a part of the research questions we should keep in mind, but we will have to deal with it because it will come back to us for sure.
Thank you. We're running short on our 100-minute time limit, but we've got a few more questions, so we'll try and get through some more of these, I think. Paul has asked, what is the impact opportunity for international work at the moment? I think that's basically what you're asking, isn't it, Paul? I mean, I think obviously touring is problematic at the moment, obviously. I mean, I think the opportunity at the moment is how artists can connect with midterm. 1 to 2 years. Okay. I think the opportunity now is how artists can connect with programmers, with curators, how artists can sort of really engage with the programmers of the programs of those people that they want to connect with, and how how this time gives the opportunity to have conversations, as I've said. I think that could, I mean, in terms of sort of the midterm to 1 to 2 years, as you say, it's an opportunity to lay the groundwork, I suppose, towards more international work. And I suppose also there is the potential that being that we can engage with work internationally in a way that, in terms of the work that is being shared digitally, there is the potential that people will experience or engage with work that they might not otherwise have done. So again, it could lead to more international touring for everyone. I mean, I think that is obviously entirely, this is all somewhat speculative, and we've been trying to sort of avoid speculation because we don't know what restrictions will continue and how long those will continue for. And obviously other people, not in this session today, but other people have sort of pointed to how organisations who might have been badly financially affected by lockdown will retreat into a kind of into a position of safety and comfort and not take the risks that are sometimes attendant with international work in terms of the cost of that work, and that there might be some kind of protectionism, I suppose, outside of lockdown. But I would hope, in some ways, I would hope that the opportunities in the future, in the midterm, will be the same as the opportunities are now, but it's very hard to say for sure. Charlotte, do you want to comment on that?
I think I'm not able to add something new to what you said, because Yeah, I'm thinking of also of an opportunity to document the situation when it will be like this still till November, that people are not able to travel, that maybe to find out a kind of format under different questions or issues, or under different topics, to point out other works, or to make, or to how to say, to find a platform to show that there are other works, that there are academies in Europe who are educating young makers, and to continue at least with a networking format as long as it not possible to travel. Yeah.
And I'm going to come to Clelia's question as a final question, because I think it's a very good question to end on, although it's a massive question as well. Clelia asks, what do the arts need and want from big institutions such as the States? We've often had a conflictual relationship with institutions, but we also depend on them. How do we navigate that in the current situation? I think, for me, I do want to sort of mention universal basic income again. I think we're again, talking specifically about the UK, we don't have a system of welfare support specifically for artists as they do in France with Intermittence, or I know that they have also in Belgium and in Germany. I'm sure there are other examples, but I think that support enables artists to have a very different relationship with institutions, because they're not as reliant on those institutions either for funding or for artists aren't necessarily always chasing the next commission, and that hypermobility for artists can be very problematic. So I think, for me, what we need, and I think previously I have thought about systems like Intermittence from a purely from the point of view of support for artists, but I think actually now in the current situation we're thinking about a much bigger societal shift to structures of universal basic income, which then just anticipates a whole range of other societal changes or transformations in terms of our values and in terms of our relationship with work and leisure and culture and learning and a whole bunch of other things, I suppose. So if I were to ask the state for one thing, I'd probably ask for lots of things actually if I could ask for one thing, but anyway, I think universal basic income would be the thing that I feel would help us all best navigate the current situation. Michele or Charlotte, anything from?
Surprisingly, we are having answers from the government. Of course, there are the companies that are already supported by the government, and the ones that are not, and they are giving answers to both the situation. But the interesting info to me is that now they are narrowing the power of control related to the money that they give you. So it means that we are not anymore related for the moment to the algorithm state of mind that rules our world. We are just evaluating as how can I say, pure existence of a fact that we are producing work and we are continuing to keep this alive. And this is too early because it's just 1 week ago that they gave this clarification about how they will act with this. but there are some points that are already just interesting. If you consider that we are paid because we produce a deficit, this is the state of the art in Italy. We produce a deficit and then the state fill up this deficit. Now is the first time that they do it just as a recognition of countership, of a conversation, no, on other terms. And this is, for me, it's also too early, but is something that is going to change a little the perspective, and we'll see what is happening from now on.
Thank you, Michele. And Charlotte?
I understand the question, but I think maybe as a lot of people have conflict with the institutions of the state. I think it's not a speciality of the artists. So it's a thing we have to work on, and we have to name the problems, we have to talk about, and we have to stick together, I think, as a society. And artists often have good ideas to communicate, and maybe this should be our task also.
I think that's a perfect note to end on, wouldn't you, Miguel and Isla? I want to thank Miguel and Isla again for this invitation. I want to thank my fellow panelists, Charlotte and Michele. Thank you, Clelia and Achate and all the lovely BEfest types. Lovely to see the faces of all of you. And yeah, just a reminder that I think we have recorded the session. If you want, I'm not sure when it will be shared, but when it's shared, obviously, yeah, hopefully you can engage. Lots of fantastic work at BE Festival all weekend. Do engage with all of the wonderful stuff online. Whatever your feelings about online work, go to everything. And I imagine they've got a donate button somewhere as well. So if they have, I would encourage you to donate as well. They will need your money. I mean, look at them. They definitely. Yeah, do value your institutions and your artists, and help everybody as much as you can through this yeah, weird moment that we are in.
And thank you, Matt, Michele and Charlotte for those very intriguing, as Ben was suggesting in the chat, conversation and thought-provoking. Many things that I hadn't heard before and that have made me think in various perspectives on all this. So thank you for your time, and thanks everyone for joining and supporting this to happen in its online format. So I think we'll see you on the other side, but in the meantime, we will keep on seeing you in these weird platforms for another 9 days. Starting tonight at 8 p.m. we release 2 videos, documentary film by Edurne Rubio called Ojo Guareña, that depicts how speleologists find a cave and find that in a space of confinement, darkness and solitude, you can also find freedom, which is, you know, draws parallels with the times we live in. Plus, at 8 o'clock also, David Espinosa will be sharing the first episode of a spectacular conference in 3 episodes, where he goes through the history of the second half of the 20th century theater and performance, and how that's affected his own career, and sets up a challenge that I invite you all listening today and joining us here today to recreate a scene, an iconic scene of theater either of your own, Michele, or of someone you admire, and to recreate that scene and record it with your camera with the tools you have at hand. So objects, with the bodies that you have at hand, either your own or the people you cohabit with, or if you cohabit with animals, you can also use animals or any objects.
I'm alone.
And from tomorrow, we have lots of performances that you can join in, and we'll end up with a party that we're very looking forward to really celebrating also in another way.
Well,
Thank you. Thank you. It
Thank
was
you
really
so
touching.
much.
ciao.
Ciao.
Ciao. Ciao.